Chapter 216, Even if we're killed, we won't tell anyone. Time they exited the dungeon? Yeah, if they entered the dungeon at 12, it's about time they finished their 3 runs and are prepared to leave. We'll be sending them off, Yishu laughed. Now, Su Mucheng and Chao Yifan understood what Yishu was trying to say. As for steamed bun invasion, even though he had gaming experience, he was relatively innocent and didn't get it, so he continued to ask, send who? The people who weren't polite to us, Yishu said. Then why should we send them? Steamed bun invasion still didn't get it. Even Tangru understood by now. Yishu had once analyzed this type of situation. The opponents left their elite teams to continue leveling. At this moment, they were finished with their 3 dungeons, so wasn't it obvious what they were going to do? But, how do you know which ones to attack? Su Mucheng asked. I asked, Yishu said. Asked. I have a lot of guild leaders on my friends list, Yishu said. Their pursuers hadn't lit up their guild tags, which meant they wanted to cover it up. However, this kind of thinking was too naive. Many guilds wanted to pull in Yishu, so his friends list was full of guild leaders from all sorts of guilds. As a result, all he had to do was send all of them messages telling them which names he had encountered during battle and asked which guilds they were in. Yishu understood the competition between each of the guilds. Even if they were in an alliance temporarily, they might be using it to pressure each other. For example, in Kanji Forest, when those 4 players had baited Yishu and Huang Shaoshan, Yishu suspected that someone had set them up without them being aware. With this sort of relationship, the guilds that were asked might not intend to sell out other guilds, but they didn't know if they would be betrayed or not. As a result, if they sold out others, they, at least, wouldn't lose out alone. And just like Yishu had predicted, many guilds actively replied. However, the replies differed. It could be seen that some of the guilds were covering up for their own players. After filtering out the bad answers, he found that there were 6 or 7 guilds. Yishu wasn't sure if it was everyone, but he had acquired a few targets already. Line Canyon TL, entire map which includes leveling area plus dungeon, only has 2 entrances, but my guess is that their main force is already guarding those. Our only choice is to look for another opportunity. Lord Grimm's footsteps stopped. This place is, Su Mucheng asked everyone. If you leave from this Line Canyon dungeon entrance TL, dungeon has several entrances into it, there's a high probability that they'll pass through here, Yishu said. You know so much. The others gasped in amazement. Yeah, I just looked it up, Yishu said. Quote. Look, a team, Tangru suddenly said. Hearing that they were going to PK, this sister's spirit immediately flared. Misty Castle, no, Yishu said. The 5 players were currently crouching behind a sand dune and were stealthily observing the players heading towards this intersection. Another team. Samsara. After Misty Castle's team left, another team followed, which Tangru immediately noticed. Go, Yishu ordered, and the 5 players leapt out from the sand dune. Samsara's players were hurrying forward and not paying attention. It's only 5 players, do we really need to ambush them? Tangru realized that these 5 were walking along the road cluelessly. You can shout at them to get their attention if you'd like, Yishu said. Tangru decided not to do it since shouting wasn't her style. Yishu was the first to move out. Lord Grimm used a shadow clone technique to flash behind them. His myriad manifestation umbrella transformed into a scythe, a priest weapon type, and a blue light glowed on the ground. The 5 players realized that something wasn't right, but by the time they looked back, the blue light had already risen and the 5 players were launched into the sky. Cleansing Mist immediately lifted her hand cannon and sent artillery shells and a Gatling gun, sending the 5 players tumbling through the sky. 1-inch Ash moved up, waved his demon-slaying blade, and then cast an ice boundary. When the 5 players landed, 2 of them were frozen into ice cubes, making it so that they were unable to quick recover. Soft Mist and Steam Bun Invasion shot forward, one on the left and the other on the right. Tangru took her battle lance and stabbed at their heads. In comparison, Steam Bun Invasion shamelessly bullied the ice cubes. Soft Mist's Scarlet Moon lance twirled like a dragon. It wasn't difficult to see that her hand speed wasn't ordinary. In addition, Lord Grimm assisted her from the side. The players were unable to resist, and by the time the 2 ice cubes melted, one of them had already fallen. The 2 who had melted out of their ice cubes weren't any better off. One of them was directly strangled by steam bun invasion and then beat up. The other ice cube tried to escape, but after taking 2 or 3 steps, a scarlet moon lance stabbed at his head, and like a mop, he was thrown towards his 2 allies. The battle occurred extremely quickly. When the Misty Castle players heard the commotion behind them, they turned their heads and saw that the scene wasn't a PK, but a massacre. The Samsara players were bullied so miserably that even normal monsters looked better than them. Seeing this, their hearts tightened. Lord Grimm, one of the players quietly said. Where'd they come out from? Another player was puzzled. Let's hurry up and leave, the third bro reminded them to not watch. The place was currently dangerous and it was best to hurry and leave. The players continued to madly run, while looking back from time to time. Samsara's players quickly turned into corpses. Seeing that Lord Grimm didn't seem to be chasing them, they let out a sigh of relief. He's not our enemy, one of the players said. Seeing Lord Grimm attacking other guilds and not mind them, the 5 wanted to watch the commotion. What? When Lonely Drink received the message, the 5 players had already died and returned to the city. During the battle, they weren't able to send out a message for help. They were only able to report it after they died. F***ck, Lonely Drink couldn't resist cursing out loud. The characters he was leading, even himself, could be sacrificed. Their purpose was to wear down one another, delaying their leveling. But the 5 players who had just died were different. These were players who were supposed to be power leveling and taking a hold of the records. However, they had been wiped out by Lord Grimm, making Lonely Drink's heart ache. What's wrong? His cursing brought the attention of others. F***ck. I burnt myself with my cigarette, Lonely Drink lied. Lonely Drink's heart was just like cold nights. He had hoped that Lord Grimm would make it even by attacking the other guilds. Their guild couldn't be the only one to suffer. Which was why even if they had been killed, they wouldn't tell it to anyone. In Line Canyon, Yishu and the others had already encountered another team. Blossom Valley, go, Yishu said. This time, they didn't ambush them and instead directly clashed with them. That team there is from Voidwalk. They're also targets. Another team followed after Blossom Valleys. Yishu looked and saw that they were also one of the pursuing guilds. 2 teams. This is going to be fun, Tengru excitedly said. She immediately rushed forward as if her toys were going to run away. Pay attention to controlling the field. Don't let any of them escape, Yishu warned. Relax, senior. Leave that to me. Steam Bun Invasion suddenly went forward and began with a sand toss. Steam Bun Invasion yelled out his name and invaded the enemy forces. Steam Bun, you're so lively, Yishu praised. Ha 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 ha, Steam Bun Invasion's laugh echoed throughout the canyon. Chapter 217, Void and 100 Blossoms. Void Walk was the guild backed by Club Void. The name of the guild was a bit different than the others. It sounded like a name given to a bad guy. In reality, this name represented Club Void's mission, to surpass oneself. However, no one really bought this explanation. No one in Void really cared. Their guild continued to use this mocked guild name, and as for their team, they continued to uphold their unique style. Many teams had one Ghostblade character and player, but Team Void was the only one that used a Ghostblade as the core of their team. The Team Void leader, Li Zan, and his character, Sobbing Ghost, were considered the Alliance's first Phantom Demon. He was Chao Yifan's current learning model. Team Void and their unique playstyle was a strong contender in the Alliance in recent years. In the past 7 years, they had entered the playoffs 5 times. Their current ranking this season was 5th place, a very hopeful position. As for Blossom Valley, they were the guild that was backed by Team 100 Blossoms. Team 100 Blossoms was also a strong contender in the Alliance, though currently they were in a transition phase. When last season ended, the team captain, Zhang Jiali, suddenly announced his retirement. This sudden decision messed up Team 100 Blossom's original plans and forced them to adjust. Zhang Jiali was also a god-level character. His Spitfire, Dazzling 100 Blossom, was a splendid player. In his 6 years as a pro, he had entered the playoffs 6 times, played in the finals 3 times, and claimed the title MVP. However, he hasn't won a single championship yet. Zhang Zhao's name was known far and wide, but he was definitely one of Glory's most tragic players. Last season, Team 100 Blossoms lost in the finals. Zhang Jiali fell into a discouraged state, causing him to suddenly announce his retirement. Team 100 Blossoms was unable to persuade him and had no choice but to respect their player's decision. As a result, during that summer rest period, Team 100 Blossom was forced to find someone to replace him. However, in the end, they were unable to find anyone suitable to succeed Dazzling 100 Blossoms. In the current season, the team's strongest account unexpectedly fell into a new player's hands. The new player's performance was quite good, but he clearly wasn't good enough yet to become the team's core. This was something Team 100 Blossom couldn't do anything about. However, there was something this season that made them pleasantly surprised. A young player on their team, Tang Hao, rose abruptly during his second year as a pro and his performance was already being considered god level. The only thing restricting him was his average brawler account, as well as Team 100 Blossom's messy playing. The similarity between the name Team 100 Blossoms and their core character Dazzling 100 Blossom wasn't just a coincidence. Dazzling 100 Blossoms was a very old god-level account and could be considered the root of Team 100 Blossom's founding. The Spitfire had always been their core class. This was something they hadn't changed over the years. This year, the core changed because of Zhang Zhao's suddenly retirement and Tang Hao's abrupt rise. However, the team still wasn't used to it. Impacted from this, Team 100 Blossoms was currently ranked 10th and the situation wasn't looking good for them. This season might be the first time they were unable to enter the playoffs. However, Tang Hao's progress gave them hope. Their current team was beginning to get their things together and it was still possible to come back in the second half of the season. Even if they didn't make it into playoffs, they would have already successfully re-established their foundation. In short, even though Team 100 Blossom wasn't doing too well right now, they were preparing for a complete renewal. They didn't plan on falling and as a result, their guild Blossom Valley was still pushing forward. Presently, the elite teams of Blossom Valley and Void Walk came across Yishu's team. Even though it wasn't an ambush, it was still unexpected to have Yishu and the others take the initiative and rush forward. Steamed Bun Invasion gleefully invaded Blossom Valley's troops, but as soon as he entered, he was hit. One of the players looked up to dodge the sand tosses blind and then quickly snapped back. He then kicked and used a Punisher on Steamed Bun Invasion. Steamed Bun Invasion wasn't careful and was stomped into the ground. This Blossom Valley dungeon team was being led personally by the 10th server guild leader. The Spitfire, who had stepped on Steamed Bun Invasion, was their guild leader, Backlight Bomb, and was a heavenly domain expert, similar to Blue River's status. He had the ability to fight Steamed Bun Invasion. Steamed Bun Invasion had originally planned on going up and fighting 1v5, but he had underestimated them too much. After using Punisher, Backlight Bomb tossed a grenade, while shouting, "Scatter!" Blossom Valley's players immediately scattered. He then raised his automatic pistol with his right hand and used his left hand to reload. This wasn't a normal reload, like when gunners ran out of ammo, but rather, it was a Spitfire skill. The speciality of Spitfires was that they used different types of bullets. A Spitfire reloading meant that they were switching to a special kind of bullet. The grenade that was thrown exploded. Steamed Bun Invasion, who had been forced onto the ground by the Punisher, had no way of dodging. He had been hit as soon as he rushed forward, but he didn't run. Steamed Bun Invasion got up and continued to close in on Backlight Bomb. "Eat my fist," Steamed Bun Invasion shouted. He was like a comic character, who shouted the skill before attacking, but compared to Huang Shaoshan, who had been doing it for a purpose, Steamed Bun Invasion just did it because he found it fun. He hadn't thought about distracting or scaring his opponents. This shout didn't scare Backlight Bomb though. Backlight Bomb rolled to the side and fired. Strangely enough, even though bullets came out, there was no smoke from the gun. The bullets that flew out glowed a pale blue and their speed wasn't as fast as a normal bullet. Experienced players could see that he had used an freezing bullet. Ice Bullet was a Spitfire level 30 skill. When an ice bullet hit the opponent, there was chance that the opponent would enter a frozen state. These types of special bullets could be fired up to 15 times, and when the player changed classes at level 20, they would learn the skill Ammunition Expansion, which allowed them to hold up to 20 of these. While rolling, Backlight Bomb was able to maintain his steady aim. His skill level clearly wasn't ordinary. However, Steam Bun Invasion wasn't so easy to deal with either. Ice bullets moved slower than normal bullets. Steamed Bun Invasion's body moved and shook left and right in order to dodge the ice bullets. Backlight Bomb continued to adjust his aim, but every time he fired, Steamed Bun Invasion would move left or right and dodge it. Gradually, Steamed Bun Invasion closed in on Backlight Bomb. However, Steamed Bun Invasion had, not just one, but 5 opponents. Steamed Bun Invasion closed in on Backlight Bomb, but behind him, a Berserker leapt forward and used a collapsing mountain on Steamed Bun Invasion. Ice bullets in front and a collapsing mountain behind, Steamed Bun Invasion didn't look as if he would be able to escape. A white light flashed and Lord Grimm's myriad manifestation umbrella stabbed forward. The white wolf-fanged lance tip stabbed through the Berserker's body. Lord Grimm's arm swung and stopped the Berserker mid-leap with a circle swing. Collapsing mountain was cancelled and circle swing smashed him towards the ground. Yi Shu moved his mouse and Lord Grimm turned around and sent a sudden strike at the cleric behind him. The cleric had wanted to heal the Berserker, when suddenly, a sky strike launched him into the air. Lord Grimm's left palm shot forward and a falling flower palm blasted him away. The cleric flew back and a curse from their side was heard. The team from Void Walk was fighting against Tang Ru and was currently surrounding the struggling battle mage. A Blade Master had snuck up behind Soft Mist, but how could he have known someone would come flying over and block him? Tang Ru heard this and immediately understood what had happened. Careful, Yi Shu warned and then continued to attack his targets. Su Mucheng's launcher attacked from afar. Both teams were in her firing range, so she would fire whenever there was a chance. Chao Yifan observed the situation for a bit and then headed to assist Soft Mist. Chapter 218, Crowd Lover Sword Boundary. The sword ghost flowed outward from 1-inch Ash's sword, creating a circular boundary. Tang Ru was inside the range, so her strength and intelligence were increased. Su Mucheng's cleansing mist stepped in as well. Chao Yifan had calculated the range of the sword boundary to envelop both players. Then he stepped forward 2 times and raised his sword to prepare to cast an ice boundary. This ice boundary was meant for the enemies, so it wasn't placed in the same spot as the sword boundary. 1-inch Ash moved accordingly and began to chant. Interrupt him, Void Walk's team leader hastily shouted and a striker pounced over. Bang! 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 3 shots rang out and the striker was forced back. Cleansing Mist had fired to protect 1-inch Ash. The time gained from this was enough to cast the ice boundary. Back! Void Walk's team leader shouted again. Against a Ghost Blades formation, the best way to deal with them was to retreat outside the boundary range. This way, it didn't matter what boundary you cast or how terrifying it would only be a backdrop. But retreating wouldn't be so simple. As soon as his voice fell, Soft Mist's Scarlet Moon lance stabbed forward. Once Chao Yifan finished casting the ice boundary, he immediately sent a Ghost Slash towards 2 players, who had rolled to the side. Ghost Slash was a skill with a considerably long attack range. An arc of purple shot out and passed through both players like a skewer through meat. The other 2 players were able to successfully retreat. But when they looked back, they saw that the other 3 were trapped inside the ice boundary. Being the only ones that had escaped, they didn't know what to do. Should they rescue their allies or not? One of them felt like it wasn't right to run away, so he moved just outside of the ice boundary's range and began sending out long-ranged attacks to save his teammates. But Void Walk's players weren't sure what to do and were all doing their own thing. Everywhere they looked, there seemed to be chasers and sword lights flying towards them. There was also that launcher, who was always sending them gifts when they didn't need them. The person at the edge of the ice boundary was closed in on by 1-inch Ash, who used a moonlight slash to launch him into the sky. Then 1-inch Ash leapt into the air and turned around to use a falling light blade. While sending the person into the ice boundary, he also knocked down another player with the shockwave. Tang Ru, Chao Yifan, and Su Mucheng controlled the 4 players, while focusing one of them and quickly killed him off. Retreat, Voidwalk's team leader finally shouted again. He had been trying hard to direct everyone during this battle and had made a total of 3 commands: interrupt, back, and retreat. From these 3 words, anyone could clearly see their preparation from going to battle to their downfall to fleeing for their lives. Unfortunately, only the player that stood far outside the boundary had the opportunity to follow it. As soon as the team leader shouted the command, he was hit tumbling by soft mist and then hit again by a chaser, exploding him to death. Even though the other 2 hadn't died yet, they were currently airborne. The player that was far away had awkwardly stood there in hesitation. Only until he heard retreat did he begin to run. Soft mist immediately chased after him with a movement speed buff. Su Mucheng also fired a few shots to block him, but sadly, he was caught by soft mist. He almost got away, Tang Ru said as she used a falling flower palm to blast him backwards. As for the rest, 2v3ing wouldn't be a problem for them, so Su Mucheng stopped helping them and went to focus on the Blossom Valley battle. Yi Shu and Steamed Bun had been making fair progress. They had killed off 2 players and only Backlight Bomb was a bit of a problem. Yi Shu reckoned that he was a fan of the recently retired 100 Blossoms team captain Zhang Jiali. Unfortunately, he was drawing a tiger like a dog. Even with the same class, he didn't have the dazzle that Zhang Jiali had and was fighting wretchedly. In fact, he was quite similar to Steamed Bun Invasion. He had clearly been engrossed in his fight with Steamed Bun Invasion, and when he recovered and looked back, he saw that 2 of his team members had already been killed. The cleric was now running madly from Cleansing Mist's attacks. This short distraction was taken advantage of by Steamed Bun Invasion. He punched, kicked, and bricked Backlight Bomb, who was unable to resist. After all, Backlight Bomb was a long-range class and wasn't good at close combat. It would only be a matter of time before the remaining players were killed. Yi Shu wasn't wrong when he said this was the most frequented road in Line Canyon. Another 5 players from a guild appeared and these guild experts cleared at similar speeds, but because they entered at different entrances and at different times, their exit from Line Canyon was different. Tyrannical Ambition. Yi Shu immediately noticed their guild tag. He even recognized one of the players in the team. Crowd Lover. The appearance of this ID was quite appropriate. This elementalist had helped them in setting the dungeon record for Frost Forest. Even though his hand speed might be a bit slower than Tang Ru's and Steamed Bun Invasion's, he was much more experienced and had an impressive understanding of strategy. He wasn't someone Tang Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion could compare themselves to. Hand speed wasn't a conclusive factor. This person was without a doubt the most skilled player amongst all the normal players he had met in the 10th server. Yi Shu believed that this type of hard-to-come-by expert wasn't a nobody in Tyrannical Ambition. He was definitely an experienced veteran from Heavenly Domain who had come to substitute for the dungeon records. However, was this crowd lover the same as that time's crowd lover? Zhang Yu was also startled when he saw Lord Grimm and the others. Their guild alliance had already arrived at Line Canyon and these few still dared to run amok? He knew that Endless Night and the others had been killed. Cold Night had also warned him to be careful because of that. When Zhang Yu exited the dungeon, he was already on guard, but after finding out that Lord Grimm wasn't there waiting for them, he put aside the matter. How could he have known that they would encounter Lord Grimm's group here? It even looked like they were currently in the middle of wiping out Blossom Valley's and Voidwalk's teams. Forward, Zhang Yu said without hesitation. Of the teams that had come, they were the first to initiate an attack on Lord Grimm and the others. Zhang Yu saw the situation clearly. He had only seen Lord Grimm and his team run a simple dungeon once, so his insight on them was limited and he wasn't able to see exactly how deep each player's strength was. But at this moment, it could be seen that Lord Grimm's team clearly had the advantage against the 2 other teams. PK was the best indicator of how strong someone was. A judgment based solely on sight could only go so far. Zhang Yu was no longer bringing with him experts from the 10th server, but instead brought the strongest elites from Tyrannical Ambition's headquarters. In a 5v5, he still didn't have too much confidence. As a result, he didn't want to waste any time and would immediately rescue the remaining Blossom Valley and Voidwalk players. Together they would be able to suppress Lord Grimm's team. Flame Explosion. Zhang Yu used this low-leveled skill. Raging Flames and Blizzard had high damage and high range, but they would also entangle the players from the two guilds. They weren't partied together, so they would take damage too. Zhang Yu was scared that his attack would kill them off. His flame explosion flew directly towards Lord Grimm. Yi Shu dodged to the side and stabbed with his lance. He forced his opponent to step to the side, and unfortunately, this opponent was hit by Crowd Lover's flame explosion. F***CK, this B***TCH is too evil, Zhang Yu cursed, while immediately sending Cold Knight a message, Lord Grimm, coordinates, 2875, 3400. Chapter 219, PvP is even scarier. Cold Knight received Zhang Yu's message. They were just so unlucky. Their tyrannical ambition already had a team wiped out and another team encountered them. He had originally planned on waiting for the other guilds to suffer, but he was the one to suffer again. Cold Knight really wanted to shout, "Why always me?" to voice his current feelings. But he had received the coordinates and there was no time to waste. The important part was to hurry and save them and possibly kill off Lord Grimm too. Of course, this wasn't something he was going to do alone. He needed the strength of everyone. Cold Knight was just about to speak, when someone else shouted, coordinates 2873, 3398. The person yelled, while typing out the coordinates for everyone to see. Cold Knight looked and saw that it was a player from Blossom Valley. The coordinate was similar to the one Zhang Yu had sent. Cold Knight was slightly startled. Clearly, Blossom Valley's players had also encountered Lord Grimm. Yes, Lord Grimm's here. Let's hurry up and go, another one shouted. Seeing that he no longer needed to personally act, Cold Knight didn't say anything and informed his tyrannical ambition players to immediately go. Currently, 3 teams were fighting Lord Grimm's group and there was still time for them to be rescued. It was different from Endless Nights and Samsara's teams where the battle was sudden. The fight was over in an instant, so Cold Knight and Lonely Drink didn't receive any messages until it was all over. Seeing how all the guilds were beginning to move, Lonely Drink guessed what had happened. Even so, he still acted slowly and asked, "What happened?" This guy wanted to sit down with everyone and talk for half an hour. Before, he had also wanted to kill Lord Grimm, but after having his elite team wiped out, Lord Grimm was placed last in his mind. He wanted the other elite teams to be killed off and then kill Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm's appeared, Cold Knight simply said. He had already guessed what Lonely Drink was thinking and doing, which was why he didn't say anything more. After saying it, he began to organize the movement. Lord Grimm's appeared. This was enough reason to act. The others began to move and there was no point in Lonely Drink stalling, so all he could do was order his Samsara to move out as well. The Guild Alliance had been split up to guard the city and check the dungeon entrances, so there were only 100 elites gathered together. Even so, this was more than enough to defeat Lord Grimm and the other 4 players. However, these so-called elites were only relative. In the new server with new players all over, they were elites. However, if they were in the old servers, they would only be considered as veterans. The true elites were those who were currently running dungeons. Unfortunately, 2 teams had already been wiped out and the remaining were also in danger. Zhang Yu could be considered as a top-tier player among the normal player population. After having his magic borrowed by Lord Grimm, he didn't lose his cool. He rolled and sent out a frost ball and then fired another flame explosion, this time, towards 1-inch Ash. At this moment, Zhang Yu's crowd lover was attacking different players and his heavy magic was fired gently like a true mage. Careful, steamed bun, Yi Shu hastily yelled. The frost ball was headed towards steamed bun invasion. Zhang Yu planned on making a sneak attack. With him acting out, things couldn't have been more clear. This crowd lover was definitely the same expert as the one who had dungeoned with them in the past. Yi Shu understood why this type of expert would silently run to the 10th server. Tyrannical ambition urgently needed to take back their pride in this dungeon. Su Mucheng immediately placed crowd lover as her target. Cleansing Mist fired a Gatling gun, spraying bullets towards Tyrannical Ambition's players. However, this was a game, so players wouldn't die from one bullet. With Su Mucheng shaking her gun, the scattered bullets had their damage split. Using Gatling gun this way wasn't for damage, but rather for temporarily stopping the opponent's offense. Against a new player, they would probably be running away in fear right now, but Zhang Yu and the experienced veterans knew what was happening. The few bullets that would hit them wouldn't do much damage. The annoying part was the brief stun and interrupt after these bullets hit. These 5 players moved about impressively. They were running, jumping and rolling to break through the rain of bullets. The sharpshooter amongst the 5 players dodged and also raised his gun to fire back. Cleansing Mist was still in mid-animation and had no way of dodging. This sharpshooter wasn't bad and used this opportunity to fire at Cleansing Mist. Su Mucheng was helpless. She could only cancel her skill to avoid the bullets. She then sent anti-tank missiles to counter, and in the blink of an eye, the two began firing at each other. This team was different. Seeing how strong this team was, the longer this went on the worse the situation would become. Yi Shu immediately made a decision. He used a sky strike to launch an opponent into the air and used a falling flower palm to send him towards Crowd Lover's team. He then used Fling to throw another opponent over, this time, disrupting the enemy team's formation. After throwing the 2 Blossom Valley players like bullets, Lord Grimm immediately used a shadow clone technique and appeared between all 5 experts. The 5 players were originally in formation, but were disrupted by the 2 meat bullets. Yi Shu used this opportunity to instantly move to the opening. "You've got guts," a striker shouted and rushed forward to front kick him. Front kick was a striker skill and had a slight knockback effect. Yi Shu wasn't worried. He moved his mouse and returned with a dragon tooth. The striker felt that his front kick would connect, but a white light suddenly flashed and Lord Grimm's battle lance appeared in front of him. The lance was long and the leg was short. At this moment, there was no way his kick would hit first, so he immediately cancelled the skill. He didn't expect the dragon tooth to be so quick though and was stabbed mid-jump. His heart suddenly dropped. The battle lance arced towards him and a sky strike launched him into the air. He had incredible mechanics and his lance speed was also quick. The striker had suffered an attack, but instantly understood what went wrong. Yi Shu's hand speed, as well as the myriad manifestation umbrella's attack speed of 5, were both uncommonly quick, causing him to lose. Circle Swing captured the striker midair. Lord Grimm flung hard and he became another meat bullet. The surrounding players dispersed to dodge. Lord Grimm retracted his battle lance and fired 3 anti-tank missiles, attacking the 3 front players. This gunshake maneuver was unimaginably difficult. At such a short range, he was able to scatter the artillery shells at such large angles apart from one another. Of the 3 artillery shells, 2 were unable to dodge, hitting and exploding at contact. Lord Grimm then turned around and tossed a grenade into the air. F***CK. The blade master behind him had jumped and planned on using a falling light blade to make a sneak attack. But this Lord Grimm unexpectedly seemed to have eyes at the back of his head and threw a grenade at him mid-air. After the explosion, the blade master fell like a broken winged angel and fell face first into the ground. How unfortunate. He had planned on using a front roll to quick recover, but he made a mistake. He messed up his front roll and crashed into the earth. Tyrannical Ambitions 5 top-tier experts were being 1v5'd by Lord Grimm, who had instantly hit 4 of them. Zhang Yu was dumbstruck. Lord Grimm's PvP was even scarier than his PvE. During this moment, he was thankful that he had sent a message to Cold Knight beforehand. Chapter 220, Screen Cannon. Zhang Yu was the only one on his team who hadn't been hit by Lord Grimm yet. Right when it looked like he was going to be hit, he immediately cast magic and raging flames roared up in an attempt to attack and defend at the same time. But the attack missed. Did Lord Grimm not rush forward? He then heard a whistling sound growing louder and louder. By the time Zhang Yu reacted, Crowd Lover was already in a huge cloud of smoke. The launcher on the side had suddenly fired at him. Quick recover. Zhang Yu obviously didn't want to be hit onto the ground by the explosion, so he rolled forward. When he got up, he heard someone say in his ears, "Long time no see." A battle lance arced up and his Crowd Lover was thrown into the sky. Clang! A cold light flashed. Zhang Yu had only just been launched, when Lord Grimm suddenly slashed an incredibly quick sword draw. It was so quick that it seemed as if the combo had been done by 2 players instead of 1. Just as the blade master on the side climbed up, Crowd Lover flew right in front of him. No one knew if he had gone stupid from falling, but the Blade Master wasn't able to dodge in time and the two crashed into each other. Terrible. Zhang Yu and the others were all fairly big names in the game. With their main accounts, they were on the same level as Changing Spring and Blue Bridge Spring Snow in the Heavenly Domain. No one dared to say they were undefeatable in PvP, but for Zhang Yu and his team's skill level, it really was the first time they had been beaten up so badly. When Zhang Yu and the Blade Master climbed back up, their other two teammates, the Sharpshooter and Striker, were now on the ground. As for their cleric, he was standing there foolishly, unsure of what to do. Steady, Zhang Yu saw that everyone had been beaten senseless. Usually, they weren't this bad. The others weren't ordinary players after all. With Zhang Yu's status, he was often in contact with pro players. It wasn't that he had never played with Tyrannical Ambitions pro players before, it was just that he had never been beaten this badly. Ultimately, it was an issue with their attitudes. Lord Grimm's strength was far greater than they had imagined, and as soon as they began fighting, he disrupted their formation. They had lost their tempo and were having trouble finding it again. Just stall for time. During this moment, Zhang Yu immediately lowered everyone's requirements. Shortly after, he heard the cleric shout, "Careful!" Zhang Yu didn't ask anything and rolled to the side as he saw a bright laser brush past him. He was one of the faster ones while the other teammate, who had been in the laser's path, was directly hit flying. Evil. From this, Zhang Yu saw Lord Grimm's treachery. He rushed up to fight them in order to force them out of their position. Their cameras were all on Lord Grimm, of course. As a result, the launcher was able to fire behind them over and over again. Zhang Yu had just been hit by a missile, and if the cleric hadn't warned him, he would have been hit again. Zhang Yu moved his camera. Cleansing Mist's cannon was no longer directed at them, but instead was directed towards Steamed Bun Invasion's side. Zhang Yu discovered that it appeared as if Lord Grimm's group had split up and found their own targets to battle with, but with this launcher at their center assisting them, they formed a single body. This type of strategy, Zhang Yu suddenly felt that it seemed a bit familiar. At this moment, he heard a teammate yell another "Careful!" Zhang Yu hastily rolled to the side to dodge the attack behind him, but this time, he crashed into his teammates and coughed blood. Why did things turn out this way as soon as he looked away? Could it be a dead angle strategy? Zhang Yu finally thought of the strategy's name. Dead angle strategy. It utilized the opponent's dead angles to move and attack. This type of strategy was effective, but was not fun to watch, especially when it was from a bird's eye view. You would only see the people being attacked while running and dodging stupidly against obvious attacks. At this moment, Lord Grimm and Cleansing Mist seemed to be using this type of strategy. Whenever his back was faced towards Cleansing Mist, she would attack, and whenever he faced towards Cleansing Mist, Lord Grimm would attack. Against this dead angle strategy, you either had to move in a way such that both sides could be seen or use terrain to protect your dead angle. Everyone, as soon as he shouted this out, he discovered that his teammates were charging towards Lord Grimm. Their backs were towards him, which meant that their backs were also facing the launcher. "Careful!" Zhang Yu shouted. And just as expected, the launcher used this opportunity to shoot out 3 anti-tank missiles, and one of them was even headed towards him. Zhang Yu had already dodged when he shouted out. He had dodged the bullet, but the 4 players in front were standing in a line, which made it difficult for them to dodge left or right, so the artillery shell Zhang Yu dodged exploded on them. "I'm right, it's a dead angle strategy," Zhang Yu confirmed. It wasn't a coincidence, but rather, it was a strategy that was being employed. Lord Grimm had intentionally set up this scenario. Apart from the dead angle strategy, Zhang Yu also remembered the launcher's strategy of using firepower to protect her teammates. This type of coordination was called a screen strategy. It was a support-type strategy that long-range classes used. Because launchers had the highest range in the game, their ability and range to support was the best, so this strategy gradually began being called screen cannon. After recognizing these 2 points, Zhang Yu at least knew that Lord Grimm's team weren't just random players. Only those who truly understood glory would be able to utilize these types of strategy at the correct time. Being able to see through Yi Shu's and Su Mucheng's coordination could be seen as an indication that Zhang Yu also understood glory well. Many ordinary players knew a lot about theory, let alone Zhang Yu, who has played Glory for so many years as well, being Tyrannical Ambitions guild leader. At this point, the game has already become a career for him. Dead angle strategy as well as screen cannon. In order to break through, they had to head towards the launcher. Zhang Yu instantly cleared his thoughts. He wouldn't entangle himself with Lord Grimm and help his teammates. Instead, he turned his head and charged towards Cleansing Mist. Flame Explosion. Frost Ball. Zhang Yu quickly moved and Crowd Lover chained 2 spells. Flame Explosion headed directly towards her, while Frost Ball predicted where she would move to. Sure enough, Cleansing Mist had to deal with it. After dodging the Flame Explosion, she lifted her cannon and accurately fired at the Frost Ball. How precise! Zhang Yu was shocked, however, he had already planned what he would do next. His Raging Flames was almost finished casting and it would explode and certainly hit her. Bang! 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 3 explosions rang through Zhang Yu's ears. He saw Crowd Lover's casting get interrupted while black smoke permeated the air around him and he was forced stumbling. What happened? Zhang Yu stared blankly. He raised his camera and saw Cleansing Mist's cannon fire a cannonball. Bang! The cannonball hit Crowd Lover's body and he was sent flying away. As the viewpoints kept changing, the sky seemed to spin. It was almost as if he was watching a cartoon as he saw Lord Grimm fling a player such that they would crash into his teammates. Zhang Yu understood what had happened. The anti-tank missiles didn't come from Cleansing Mist, they came from Lord Grimm. That guy was an unspecialized, so he could use launcher skills as well. This screen cannon strategy had 2 supports as the center. Crowd Lover fell to the ground. Just as he was about to roll away, everything in front of him turned black. His character once again drilled into the ground. Whoa! I just killed one and another came. Our synergy is so amazing. Zhang Yu wasn't able to see anything. All he could hear was someone yelling into his ears. F***ck. That sand toss was too shameless. Zhang Yu figured out what happened.